Welcome to Shut Up and Say Something. I am your host and creator of the show, Deedre Daniel. This podcast is all about how to live a more fascinating life. And we're learning how to do that one interesting conversation at a time. We try to stay away from discussing politics, religion, and the ad nauseum topic du jour, but anything else is fair game. And this is episode number 15. It's just me and you today. You get me all to yourself because every fifth episode I fly solo without a guest. When this episode hits your eardrums, provided you downloaded it immediately upon release on Friday, I will have just tested out some new stand up material on an audience that really didn't know they were there to hear my jokes. I was hired to be the closing speaker at Terry Cardin's Non-Doozapalooza event in Nashville. She specifically asked me to do a creative review of all the speakers of the day, and I decided to kick that discussion off with a monologue about my inner thigh fat. The first thing I said when I addressed the audience was, "So my thighs touch at the top." And then I told a story about my fat, dropped some fat related facts on them, and then tied it all to making money, which is what the conference was about. If you're dying to know how that went, ask anyone you know who went to Palooza this week. There may be a video on YouTube soon, and all I can say is hopefully I killed. If not, well, there's always a next time, and hopefully Terry's not mad at me. I also tried out the newest version of the conference edition of the very interesting card game. This was something I created just before COVID hit, and I was passing out these cards at an event in Salt Lake City, and then the world pretty much shut down after. So I wasn't able to actually see it in action. So in this version of the game, all attendees receive one card with a different question or activity on it as they enter the networking event. The cards are branded with the event sponsor's logo on one side because after years of running Geico's affinity marketing division, I can't stop branding things. But these cards are not typical cheesy conversation starters. They're not icebreakers, they are ice destroyers. And the questions are often a little bizarre and elicit a lot of laughs as people try to outdo each other with the most ridiculous answers. Some of them are a little more brainy, like one of them says, it asks you to describe how a bicycle works as if you've never seen one before. And that's sort of the fallacy of knowledge. A lot of people think they know how something works until they actually have to describe it. Another example is like golf balls, and some humans have dimples. What other products or animals would be improved or worsened by adding dimples? And that's a much more interesting question than what do you do for a living? So, for instance, in that situation, adding dimples to snakes or politicians, like giving them cute little dimples, would that make them better or would that make them more terrifying? I mixed in some funny activities and other practical jokes, like instructing the card holder to concoct unlikely food pairings from the buffet and then act like they're delicious and convince other people to try them, like, tuna dipped in chocolate sauce or something like that. And then if they find someone else holding the same game card, they win a prize from me. So winning is difficult. It requires a lot of heavy networking since there are 126 unique cards and several cards instruct people to trade their cards after interacting with each other. So the target is always shifting. And I have written even more cards for larger gatherings. I also do full scale live game shows where everyone answers the same question at the same time. They huddle up in a smaller group at their tables, discuss the question, and then send a representative to the microphone if they think they have an interesting or funny answer. And people run to the microphone. I mean, a lot of times event planners will say to me, I don't know if people are going to want to go up to the microphone. And in the past, no one ever really wanted to talk to the microphone. And I mean, they're practically knocking people down and a line forms, and it pretty much discounts any old opinions about what people will do in an environment like that. I mean, everyone will say to me, I've never seen people interact like this before, which I think is like the best compliment you can get because that's the whole point, right? And I do these game shows for small groups and then audiences up to 2,000 people. That's the largest I've done so far. And yes, I know how to effectively make 2,000 people stop talking all at once. In other news, this podcast passed the 1,000 download mark in less than 3 months, which was pretty awesome to see. So, thank you for sharing this podcast with your friends. I mean, that's really the only way it grows. And so, thank you for listening to me. I know you have plenty of other things to do and millions of entertainment choices out there. So, it makes me feel good that you actually want to spend an hour or more with me. So I was looking at these IAB stats, which stands for the Interactive Advertising Bureau, and they provide like industry standard in podcast stats. And supposedly their numbers are legit and they scrub off bots and all that kind of stuff. And 91% of my downloads come from the United States. 24% of those come from my home state in Florida, and 17% of those come from the DMV. That's the DC, Maryland, Virginia, for those of you that don't know. And that makes sense because I've lived in both of those areas and I have tons of friends and colleagues who still live there. But there are people in other countries downloading these episodes, which is really exciting to see. Coming in second place after the United States is India. Hello, India. Indian food happens to be my favorite. I fell in love with it when I was living in England. My family would get so excited about being able to go to an Indian restaurant. It was really like the best food in England. I mean, it seriously was. So it was just such a real treat to go out to an Indian restaurant. And then coming in second is Brazil. Thanks for showing interest in my little show. I have never been to Brazil or India, and I hope to go to both of those places one day soon. Coming in third is Canada, A, followed by, do y'all hate that? Do you hate that when people say A? And I'll stop saying that. I bet that bothers you. So, followed after Canada is the United Kingdom, Germany, Mexico, Netherlands, and Italy, all places that I have visited. Followed by Australia. How are things down under? And that is definitely a bucket list trip for me. And after Australia, we have the Russian Federation, France, Costa Rica, Saudi Arabia, Denmark, Algeria, South Africa, Austria, Nepal, Hong Kong, China, and Saudi Arabia and Denmark are listed again. So I don't know if I really trust these stats, but they're broken out again separately. I've been to Hong Kong and France, but all these other places are on my list to see one day. Which brings me to Belgium. There is one person or entity that has downloaded every single episode in Brussels, Belgium, almost as soon as they are released. And I don't know who this person is. And I asked them in episode 10 to identify themselves, and so far they have not. This leads me to think of three possibilities. You are counterintelligence AI scanning my shows for specific keywords or codes. So here you go, little bot. Yankee Oscar uniform, Juliet uniform Sierra Tango, Delta Echo Charlie Oscar Delta Echo Delta, Foxtrot Alpha Romeo Tango Sierra. Option number two, you're shy. Don't be shy, my little Belgian friend. So many people are asking about you. Seriously, Liz from Queens called me up a few weeks ago. She wanted to know, hey, have you heard from that Belgian person yet? One of my friends from LA asked if I had heard from the person from Austria or Germany, and mixing up other countries is a very American thing to do, which he laughed at, but I knew what he meant. And he actually really wants some closure. McManus Wooden, the Geico caveman I interviewed in episode number 7, inquired a couple of times. And side note, he recently became an associate professor at University of Southern Indiana. So good luck to you, Mac. But back to you in Belgium. The third option is you are the famous street artist Banksy. I know you're supposed to be in England, but actually living in Brussels would be a very Banksy thing to do. You simply can't out yourself on my show. I get it. It's cool, but I'm really excited. I can now say Banksy's one of my fans. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Which brings me to the next person from the Fan-Doe-Philes. For those of you who don't know, a fan-doe is an unidentified solo listener in one location who has downloaded every single episode of this podcast. Someone in Lansing, Michigan was leading the pack, but they did not download the Scary Stories episode. You were so close, Lansing. Go back in there and download that episode, and you will be the very first Fan-Doe-Phile. As soon as you download that episode, you will be inducted into the club. So let me know who you are, how you found the podcast, what makes you want to listen to the next episode, and maybe answer some of your favorite questions. Include your mailing address, which should be in Lansing, and I will send you a mug or poster from my branded collection on interestingconversations.com. Send your email to service@interestingconversations.com. And I'm going to make this a regular thing. So check it out. I even have some theme music for it. What do you think? So who's next? Make sure you hit the download button for each available episode in my show catalog. And if you were the first and only person in your geographic location to do that for every single episode, you could be the next person in the Fan-Doe-Philes. Here are a list of cities in the United States with almost one download per episode. Most of you need to download 2 or 3 shows to be an official Fan-Doe-Phile. You ready? Chicago. You are one away, Chicago. Boston, Baltimore, Phoenix, Raleigh-Durham, Dallas, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and Norfolk. Well, it says Norfolk, Portsmouth/Newport News. And then it drops down. Evansville, you're only at 8. And Tallahassee, you're only at 8. As far as the Tampa, St. Pete area, I have hundreds of downloads there, so it's too hard to figure out who's listening. But we'll figure out something to do for my fans there. So I hope you caught the episode with Dr. Louis Rosenberg about the metaverse. He invented a technology that helps groups, organizations, and businesses make the right decision with incredible results. And his technology could seriously change the world. I mean, it could change the way people bet. I mean, they're able to accurately predict who's going to win a game, who's going to win a horse race. It's crazy. And they're able to help businesses make the right decisions. And he talks about privacy concerns in the metaverse that you really need to understand. And then Mark Muncy, this was a fun episode. He told many scary and creepy stories. If you're a history buff or a horror buff or anything creepy, I would definitely give that a listen. Turn the lights off and get a little creeped out. And then the episode with Alex Trimble was extremely motivating. We discussed starting and balancing a side hustle when you already have a job, and how his motto, stay strong, stay positive, keep moving. Actually, it's stay strong, stay positive, stay moving, keeps him centered in times of failure. The latest episode with comedian Nate Fleming covered many lessons learned through improvisational techniques, how your past is not as big of a deal as you might think, and how good comedy comes from a place of honesty. Next week, you will get the pleasure of meeting Tessa Lane. She is a prolific romance novelist specializing in smoking hot cowboys, heroes, and billionaires who fall in love with sassy and strong ladies. We talk about finding your passion and how to bring more passion into your life. She's a lot of fun, so mark your calendar for that discussion. So listen next Friday at 11:11 a.m. Eastern. And little warning, that episode will be sexy and it'll definitely give you something to think about or talk about with others over the weekend. I also have a show lined up to kick off Halloween season with Owl Going Back, a prolific horror author. So expect that the first Friday of October. Speaking of time, I recently discovered that although I usually upload the show to go live at 11:11 a.m. Eastern, other platforms hold the RSS feed for a while and release it on their own schedule. So even though I release it to go live at 11:11 a.m. on my end, Spotify and other platforms often will hold it for even longer. So the easiest way to be notified when it's officially available on Fridays is to subscribe on your platform and also set the notifications so that you get an instant notification when it's available. Meanwhile, I will work on the back end to figure out when to release it so the shows appear at that time on your favorite platform. I've been told that's impossible since they all do it differently, but now I have a new challenge to attack. Or maybe I'll just be exclusive on one platform. I'm still figuring that out. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a fantastic week. Until then, my friends, be interesting.